Ways to connect to the ancestors. Wingapo, beautiful people. Kina for joining me here today. Have you started building your family tree yet? Are you ready to start communicating with the ancestors and don't know where to begin? If you are, then let's get you started. 6 years ago, I embarked on the journey to communicating with my ancestors by first asking myself, I have a family tree. Now what? I'd found plenty of African spirituality books and websites that showed one how to do just that. But since understanding and overstanding that I have indigenous roots from the US, such as Powhatan, Salagi, or Cherokee, and Wendat, to name a few, African spirituality was not the way for me. My ancestors wanted me to approach them from an indigenous Amarakuan perspective. I'll show you ways that I communicate with my ancestors that has worked for me. You can walk in nature alone and communicate with them. Try it first without pen and paper, no distractions, and see what happens. Or you can use oracle decks such as the Angels and Ancestors deck or the Native Spirit Oracle deck. Depending on what my higher self or intuition tells me, I'll either use that one or the latter. They both have specific spreads for communicating with the ancestors. You can also try the altar. This is what I first utilized to help me create sacred space for communicating with my ancestors. First, I bought a table. You don't have to use a table. You can use a shelf. Make sure wherever your shelf is, it's in a low foot traffic area. Also, you can build a permanent altar outside. If you live in a high wind area, though, you'll have to glue your altar table down and your altar items down as well. That might end up being more work. So this is a Day of the Dead altar. You can add a coffin to your altar. It's up to you, but there are must-have items that you should have on your altar, such as food. Like here in this picture, it's loaded with food from the ancestors, and this is a ancestor altar from Mexico. And this is also an altar by someone in Peru. That's beautiful. You need to have a white sheet to cover your table, and then another sheet on top of that. I use a white linen fabric on my table, and then I use an aguayo altar cloth on top of that, similar to the one in this slide. I use aguayo because I practice Quero mysticism, but use whatever cloth you might find that's pleasing. Just don't use black. If you are indigenous to Amaraku or America, then add cornmeal to your altar. The ancestors regarded corn as a lifesaver. To have corn growing in your fields is to be abundant. Tobacco is grown by our ancestors. It was used for medicinal and spiritual purposes. Tobacco is indeed sacred. Put it on your altar. Now, other items to have on your altar are personal artifacts your ancestors wore, such as bracelet, hat pin, necklace, rings. In addition to indigenous Amarakuan ancestry, I also have Irish and Scottish ancestry. I found a swatch of my Scottish clan's tartan, and now it rests on my altar. This is something a little different. You can take a picture of a banner that celebrates a holiday your ancestors may have celebrated back in the day. The possibilities are endless, so don't hold back. Your altar can be as elaborate or as quiet as you want it to be. You can also add flags from your ancestors' country to your altar. This is the Welsh flag. If I can find a small version of it, then I will place it on my altar. I have Welsh ancestry as well. You can add other items such as this obsidian arrowhead to your altar. I'm giving you broad strokes because your ancestor altar should reflect how it should reflect you. It's personal. Another couple of must-have items for your altar. You have to have a candle. Light it when you are about to start communicating with them. The light from the flame is the doorway through which the ancestors enter the sacred space. Use a white candle to keep it simple. You will need incense to burn. Incense is the breath of God, Great Spirit, Goddess, whatever you call it. Use cone, sticks, or charcoal for burning. Mayans and Aztecs used copal, and if you are indigenous, most likely your ancestors migrated from Mesoamerica or Mesoamerica and settled different parts of the Turtle Island. For instance, the Powhatans migrated from Mesoamerica and settled in Virginia. Indigenous ancestors like copal. It gives off a clean scent and clears your sacred space. This is a wrought iron cauldron. Some people call it a brazier. Use it to burn ancestor money on your specific ancestor days. And speaking of which, let's talk about ancestor money. You can buy a pack on Etsy. Etsy has a plethora of spiritual and religious items that I just mentioned. Ancestor or hell money has denominations on it such as 80 septillion dollars, and that pays off any debts your ancestors accrued when they were on the mortal plane. Every time you burn a bill, it pays off that debt, and eventually the debts will be paid off. Kuya-rumis or stones are on my altar. I use kuya-rumis for representing the ancestors on mine. They absorb the essence of them. By the way, you can add crystals such as ancestralite, but stones are everywhere and free. I actually found a tiny Venus of Willendorf for my altar. It represents the first mother in my mother line. You could do something like that as well. Gather as many pictures as you can find of your ancestors, and only the ones who have transitioned, and place those pictures in a frame on your altar. Sometimes you can only find one or two pictures, and that's okay. Don't beat yourself up over the lack of them. When you say their names in greetings and thanks, your ancestors will be pleased. As you build your family tree, you'll want to add names to a list and place that on the altar as well. Now let's talk about when to communicate with your ancestors. You'll want to set a specific day and time for working with them. Where, like in a previous slide, you offer a meal and a glass of water, I offer 3 glasses of water, but you can offer 1 or 9, whatever is convenient for you. Begin with offering a small portion of your meal with water for the ancestors every day. Be consistent. If you aren't consistent, then they will be inconsistent with you. It's a F around if you'll find out, and you'll find out scenario. On the specific ancestor days where you are only communicating with them, also offer them food, burn ancestor money, offer the cornmeal and tobacco. Burn money, before you ask for guidance. Talk to them as if they are alive and in front of you, and be yourself. Additionally, set aside days for not doing any spiritual things. We all need breaks from time to time. Guess what? You will get an answer by way of a tap on the shoulder or a message whispered by way of clairaudience. Maybe an item of yours will fall down from a shelf or fireplace mantle. If you're like me, and get freaked out by the taps on the shoulder or elbow upon waking or in the middle of the night, then politely ask them to communicate with you through the cards. They will comply. Don't forget to open and close your communication with saluting the 7 directions. Stand in the south, west, north, and east, and then salute the sun, moon, Pachamama, or Mother Earth Gaia, whatever you call her. All of this is in your Ancestral Guide Handbook. Also, using sage to wave around in the corners as you open and close sacred space is helpful and very much something you should do. I alternate between sage, smudge stick, and Palo Santo stick. And you can also use a clearing spray or spray with Florida water if you just don't want to deal with having to burn smudge stick. Okay. How can I work with the ancestors when traveling? This is my traveling mesa. Mesa means altar. You don't have to call it a mesa. That's what I do because I practice Quero mysticism. Anyway, this comes with me when I travel. I have my zippered pouch, tea candle, medicine wheel, which is optional, on a wood disc, copal, kuyarumi, that represents my ancestors, mesa cloth, a tiny one, a tiny swatch of tartan plaid representing my Scottish ancestors, and a Palo Santo stick. Take a picture of your ancestors' picture frame and list of ancestor names and shove it in that pouch. Bring your clearing spray also in case you can't light your copal or candle and do your talking with the ancestors. That's it. If you have any questions, please contact me and Kina for spending this time with me, and Anna.